Welcome to The Kingdom Sleeps, the fantasy bedtime story decided by the roll of a dice. My name's Andrew, I'll be your story master for this evening.
And my name's Tom, and I'll be playing the role of Yohm.
For those of you who aren't familiar with tabletop role-playing games, the concept is very simple. Tom and I will be improvising a story this evening, and occasionally we'll roll a dice to see where that story goes. It's as simple as that.
And for those of you who are familiar with D&D podcasts, if you're looking for something with just as much adventure and narrative, but maybe a little bit more chilled out to help you relax before bed, or indeed fall asleep, then we're hoping this is the podcast for you.
The Kingdom Sleeps is set in the fantasy realm of Sopros, a vast continent formed over the back of a sleeping giant. The dreams of the Colossus, known as the Mamu, roam the vast and otherworldly landscape as spirit creatures, shaping the lives and culture of the people that live there. If you'd like to hear more about the lore of Sopros, you can begin by listening to episode 0. Tom, would you like to tell us a little more about the character of Yohm?
Now, Yohm is a member of the merfolk people, though he was born and raised in the desert region of Shetsuana on the southernmost tip of Sopros. Living a nomadic lifestyle, he grew to become a respected guide, making a living by shepherding members of the different guilds across the harsh sands. He's gaunt and weathered, but he still holds an aquatic aura about his person, though this is usually hidden by the vibrant robes that drape him head to toe.
And with that, make yourselves comfortable and join us where the kingdom sleeps. Two days ago, you met with a group of miners from the Harvesters Guild in a small settlement just outside the city of Suncolt. They are led by a man named Ren, an older Duergar gentleman whom you've come to know quite well through various dealings with the guild over the years. They are paying you a small but significant fee to do something you've done many times before, to do what you do best, to lead them across the harsh perils of the Schwertsuna Desert to the site of a confirmed mineral deposit where they hope to begin the process of setting up a permanent mine. It is currently the evening of your second day of travel, and whilst it has been a reasonably pleasant and easygoing trip for yourself, the less experienced group of fresh-faced miners that Ren has asked you to drag across this desert have not been coping well with the intense heat of the region, as well as the vast and varied creatures and Mamu that inhabit the desert. And so, despite being not more than a couple of hours away from your intended destination, Ren has insisted upon setting up camp for the evening in order to let the youngsters rest and continue on the short distance in the morning. So now, you find yourself at rest on the floor next to a crackling campfire that you yourself have put together not too long ago. The group of young miners have all retired for the night and sit tucked away in their tents that encircle the encampment. And so it's just you, your old friend Ren, next to the fire, enjoying the twinkling of the stars and the warmth of the fire. The smell of burning desert wood fills your lungs. The beautiful landscape of the desert at twilight, with its rolling dunes and spires and flocks of Mamu that scatter the sky. And as you sit, Ren happens to be in the middle of reminiscing on old times with you, as he leans in a little closer with his flask in hand, taking casual sips as he goes. And so, the last time we were here, do you remember the last time we were in the forest, in this region? Maybe this part, to be honest, I don't know the desert as well as you. But I do remember. You had, what was this? You found such a delicious, what did you call it? It was a root of some kind. It's very, very sweet. Was it a sweet root? Something like this?
It was exactly that, yes. Sweet root. Surprised you still remember.
Yohm, it was one of the most delicious things I have ever tasted.
Well, it's the time of year for it. Surprised you didn't mention it earlier. We could have been keeping an eye out.
Well, do you think perhaps you may be able to find a little to throw on the fire this evening?
This evening, there's a chance, I suppose, but going out, it's cold. It's been a long day. The risks of the night.
I'll throw an extra mark your way.
And now you're talking my language. So, just for you or enough for the gang?
I don't see why we shouldn't just keep this a little secret between you and I.
That's what friends are for.
And he rustles into his pocket and pulls out a shining harvester's mark that he leans over and hands to you.
I'll never get bored of taking these from you, as he gently slips it back into his pocket.
Lovely. You see Ren shake his head and give himself a little chuckle as you place that nice, fresh, cold, metallic harvester's mark in your pocket. So, do you think it may be somewhere nearby?
Like I said, there's as strong a chance here as anywhere else. Give me a couple hours. I should have found some by then. If not, I won't wander too far. Keep an eye on your boy while I'm gone, yeah?
Certainly. Always do.
Alright then, well, if you're asleep, you'll find it when you wake up. If not, I'll find you.
Sounds good to me.
I slowly get on up again, take in the cool evening night, and head towards the Houndback to sort of just prep for a mini trek.
Sure thing. The Houndbacks are all asleep, just some distance away from the fire, trying to get a little bit of residual warmth from it. And you head on over to the one that you know best, giving a little stroke as you head on by, just to gauge whether it's happy to be waking up. This huge dog, half camel-like creature, that is covered in matted fur and braced with all sorts of bags from the travel. But as you try to jostle it awake, it seems to know what its job is and what you're gearing up to do, and very gradually gets itself up on its haunches and plods on all fours, ready for you to get on top.
No, that's a nice girl. Thank you for your hard work yet again. I promise you'll get it rewarded back when we're home.
Blows a sharp blast of air out of its nostrils, as if it agrees with you but is a little disgruntled by your request.
Alright then, so, knowing what the lands are like around here at least, there's a good chance Sweetroot could just pop up pretty much anywhere. The sands shift quite a lot, so I guess I'm just gonna start heading out in a little bit of a direction, just away from camp, just for a little bit, to make sure none of the other members of the caravan here clock that I'm disappearing. Don't want to worry anyone anymore.
Sure. You very subtly and stealthily make your way out of camp. Not too much trouble. You head away from the twinkling fire into the twilight desertscape that surrounds you. An environment you're very familiar with, of course. As you tread over the soft, slipping sand, riding on the back of the Houndback, looking out across the desert dunes and the pinkish, purplish sky that twinkles with stars ahead of you. You take a moment to appreciate what a nice and clear evening it is, as you so often know that nights in the desert can get stormy, can get windy, so you couldn't have picked a more perfect day to go out foraging for Sweetroot in particular. As you head out just a few minutes away from the encampment, you can see potentially 2 routes to go. There's a small valley created in the dunes that heads over to your left, that seems to go a little ways down, so there's a small horizon that's created and you can't quite see over the top of this sand dune that seems to have quite a lot of air moving over the top. There's like a small little cyclone happening over in that direction. And in the other direction over to your right is a dune that rises its way upwards, but at the top of there you can see what looks like some foliage that you're familiar with, mostly just dry bushes, but there's at least more of an indication to you that there might be some vegetation. Although, having said that, in your knowledge you know that sweetroot particularly likes to find itself in the lower ground, so which way do you think Yohm would go from his experience?
Right now I'm going to follow the winds and head down in the dip of the sands towards what appears to be that little valley ahead.
Wonderful. As you make your way over there, and the houndback starts to move a bit more gently with a bit more caution as it tries not to slide all the way down what's becoming quite a steep little valleyed dune. And you just get to the bottom before the houndback slips a little bit of the way and ends up sort of half tumbling into the valley, where you can actually now see quite a lot of vegetation that's cropped up and sprouts out of the sandy ground, almost in neat little rows. And there's all sorts of spiky foliage and flowering vegetation that you can see. Would you like to roll the dice just to see what it is that Yohm finds?
Certainly would. It's going to be a 17.
A 17. As Yohm heads forward through this narrow duned valley, he notices 2 things. He notices just up ahead, towards the end of this valley where the dunes start to rise up again, a particular purplish flower, which to him indicates the sweet root that he's after. But also, in the air, in the stillness of the night, he recognizes this small, gentle whistling, a very particular, almost like air flowing through pipes, which he recognizes to be the sound, what he knows as whistleweed, which is not to everyone's taste, but a delicacy that Yohm has enjoyed time and time again in the desert. But it would require a little bit more tracking to find where that noise is coming from, as it's being carried on the wind.
Well, as the dutiful friend that Yohm is, first of all, get the job done, and we'll pop along to the purple flower, and I'll begin extracting it in the ways I usually do, almost keeping a very keen ear out for precisely where that whistling might be coming from.
Wonderful. As Yohm heads on over to this beautiful, bright, purple flower and leans down to start extracting the roots carefully from the desert sand, and he can smell the beautifully sweet, almost like baking bread coming from this flower, pulls it right out of the ground to reveal these thick, chunky, almost carrot-like roots, to be the sweet root. And you've got 3 or 4 good-sized roots there. You're sure Ren will be pleased with.
Sounds like his lucky day. Let's find out if it'll be mine.
As you keep an ear out on the wind, why don't you roll for me to see just how lucky you get with your perception.
That time we're going to be on a 15.
A 15. Well, being well versed in the desert, that does you fairly well. And even though it's a little bit hard to tell, as the sound is being carried along on the wind, you're fairly certain this whistling that you recognise is coming from just over the sand dune at the end of this valley.
I look back at the houndback again. She resting well?
She seems to be fairly happy, if not a little bit eager and twitching to get back to the fire for the night.
Well, I give her a gentle nod from this distance. I won't work her too hard, and I'll proceed on foot towards where the whistling might be coming from.
It's quite a steep little hill worth of sand that you've got to get yourself up. But dexterous as you are and well able to move your way across steep hills of sand, you get yourself slowly and gently on top of this rising hill. And as you creep over the top, you see this one solitary black root sticking out of the ground with tendrils almost like coral, and as it shakes in the wind and the air that blows past it and hits you in your face, you can hear that characteristic whistling of the whistling weed right there in front of you. And as you see it, and as you go to grab the very tip of it, it shoots down into the ground under the sand.
Gah.
And then just as quick as it disappears, this yellow little bell-shaped creature pokes itself up out of the sand. Almost glows, this yellow creature, with large, black, fairly innocent and cute-looking eyes, with a small little smile, and it's got tiny little paws for hands and feet, but it almost looks like an upturned cup with a face that seems to giggle at you, and you know this creature to be a mamu. That's particularly the yellow mamu, who like to play some tricks sometimes.
Well, after the recent discovery, Yohm's in a pretty good mood, so he's in the mood for some tricks, let's say. So he answers with a wry little smile, and I guess immediately turns around on the spot really sharply, looking in the opposite direction from the mamu and the root that just disappeared a moment ago.
As you do so, behind you, you hear a rustling of sand, and then some more rustling,
and I listen and I wait, and with my best perception and reflexes possible, I'm going to try and quickly turn around and nab it from where I believe it's a pop-up next.
Go on, give me a roll to see how successful you are.
That's a 12.
12. Listening out to the rustling of the sand behind you as the wind gently flows through your hair, you feel like the rustling is just about to settle, so you turn on your heels and go to grab. Just as you do, you're startled by the fact that there's no longer one little cute-looking bell-shaped mamu, but there are 3 in front of you. And one of them opens its mouth very wide, as if to yawn, and inside its mouth you can see the root, the whistling weed that you're after, and it quickly snaps its mouth shut, and as they begin to giggle at you, they move themselves round like a game of cups, alternating positions quickly. You try your best to keep an eye on which direction the route goes, and they suddenly stop, and the sand settles, almost floats to the ground like dust. And they look up at you, eagerly awaiting.
1, 2, or 3. And as quick as last time, again, I'm going to try and just jump towards the third one, not aggressively, but quickly and sternly nonetheless, see if I can just about scoop it up, the one on the right.
So you prime yourself ready, bending your knees, and very sharply but playfully grab towards the third on the right. And you pull this little bell-shaped creature up by the little tassel on its head. And underneath, you see the whistling weed that you're after. Giggles and giggles.
Got you this time. Pluck it out from underneath gleefully and gently put the Mamu back onto the ground.
He seems very pleased with that interaction as it sort of uses its little paws to cover its eyes, and it's as much as it can without being too human-like. It almost seems like it's letting out a real belly laugh at that, and the other two are giggling away as well, and they sort of flatten down and outwards, and their bodies transform from this bell shape, almost like a tulip, into an open lily form. And inside each of the open lilies are another 2 whistling weeds, but they seem to be presenting to you as gifts as they shuffle through the sand right up to where your feet are.
I am going to slip out just one of the sweet roots I picked for Ren just earlier and trade it in place for the whistling weeds they're gifting to me.
Take out the sweet root, you grab the whistling weed, and in return place the sweet root into the lotus, which the 2 that were offering come together and wrap it up, and their bodies entwine. They become of one creature, almost like twisting vines. And their bodies float into the air, almost like a lit, floating lantern that just begins to sway and bob in front of you. You can almost feel a bright glow against your face as you see these bright eyes return into its form, and this big smiling face that giggles away once more before lifting very gracefully in a spiral up into the air, shooting off into the distance, into the twilight.
And this is why I love the desert. And he just watches them float away for a moment, just soaking it in. Just seen similar things in his past, but rarely so close and directly interacted with the Mamu, and it's always a special experience for Yohm when he does. Kind of laughs to himself a little bit as well. Ren will never believe where I got this from. Makes for another good story though. As I turn back around, prideful in my stride back, getting ready to, I guess, let out the inner child a little bit more and slide down the dune I just climbed up, back towards what's probably now yet another sleeping houndback.
Well, as you slide down that dune in a playful manner with some fun in your heart, you are welcomed by an upstanding and fairly disgruntled houndback who is pointing in the direction of camp and looking over its shoulder as if to say, quickly get on my back, and let's be on our way now that you've done that.
With my head held, I guess, a little bit lower now, feeling the scorn of a sleepy houndback, I mount on up and quickly yet quietly once more shimmy back to camp.
Great, and it's not very long riding, as you got fairly lucky, only being a few, 10 to 20 minutes away from camp that you found the routes you were looking for. Well, the routes you were looking for. And as you return back to camp, you see Ren, slightly more dozy, having taken a few more sips from his flask, sat by the fire, and the knights, of course, getting on.
I'm going to try and sneak up on him, the playful spirit still in my mood.
Sure. Are you going to do that on Houndback, or leave the Houndback at the side?
Yeah, we'll drop her off again.
Okay. As you dismount the Houndback, sneak your way up to a very stoic and pensive Ren sat by the fire. He seems to just be staring and very absorbed. And you get not but a few inches away from his back, and he still doesn't seem to have noticed you.
And now I'm going to quietly reach for the sweet root from my bag again and just reach over his slightly smaller stature, drop it off.
As you drop it into his lap, he lets out a small yelp of surprise and almost wiggles around in a small panic for a moment before he jostles himself and turns around and sees you there, presumably with a small smile on your face.
Easier than I thought.
I wasn't expecting you for some time. Well, I tell you this, do not do that again in this desert.
Nah, forgive me, friend, you know me. Gotta keep you on your toes.
You better believe I'm almost always on my toes in a place like this.
Well, it's a good thing I didn't come empty-handed then, isn't it?
And he picks up the root that you've dropped into his lap and eyes its beautiful orange colour, holds it up to the firelight to inspect it. This looks like a fine specimen. You got very lucky tonight.
Yeah, apparently so. But can't say it's all bad out here, right?
No, I suppose not, if you know what you're doing.
Now, come on, let's go for it. I've got another story to tell you.
Sounds good to me. And he picks up a discarded piece of dry, sharp stick that he looks like he's almost gotten ready whilst you're away, and sticks the root on the end to throw into the fire and grill as he sits. I'm always surprised every time I come to this desert and spend some time with you, Yohm. You almost seem like you are a part of the desert itself.
Feels like it some days, but you just gotta know what to look out for. Be open to it. It likes to give back, I promise you. Guess where that came from? That thing in your hand right now.
Well, I'm hoping it came from the ground.
In a manner, yes. What was to say? Friendly little Mamu dropped it off for you.
Mamu?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure it is safe?
Oh, of course, they're harmless. But...
Are you sure?
Yeah, you should have seen it, Ren. It was beautiful. They were playing a game. Even in a place like this, it's cold and dark and empty, as it is. They're still up for a little bit of fun. Your guild lot can learn a thing from them, I'm telling you. Trust me. Take a bite. It'll taste better than usual.
And he looks at the root with some hesitation, seeing that it's mostly roasted. brings it up to his mouth and takes a large, hearty bite as he smells the sweetness of it and that baking bread aroma. He bites through, give a little bit of a crunch. Oh my goodness, yes. It is just as I remember. Well, I don't know if you have heard of the stories of the Mamu on the mainland.
Here and there.
People are saying that they're not being so friendly these days.
I've heard grumblings, but...
Strange behavior. Hassling people in the towns. Growing to such big sizes and being stubborn. Sometimes even the bright stone, it does not affect them.
Really?
This is what I've heard.
Oh, I've not. How long have you been hearing these stories for?
Well, perhaps the first time I heard was 2 or 3 seasons ago.
I don't think it's hit the desert yet. It seemed normal, mostly.
It feels like if it were to affect anywhere, it would be the desert where the Mamu are. Mostly wild and varied.
Maybe I've been lucky. What did the light guard say about it?
They seem to think it is something to do with the Colossus being angry with the people.
Isn't that always the case with them?
Yes, I am not so sure I have to believe much that they say. Well, either way, I'm very wary of what it is that Amamu has to do or give you. But I suppose this is quite a nice gift.
You've spent long enough with me now, Ren. You should know that. They're nice. Respect them, they respect you. Part of the wildlife.
Yes, I suppose you would know best.
Oh, at least for the desert ones.
Yohm. Well, I've known you for some time now, and I wanted to ask you. And I'm not trying to be rude, or... It is a little strange, no? That, well, we are in the desert and, you are... And he waves a hand in the direction of your body, clearly highlighting your blue skin and gills. Well, merfolks, they don't usually survive in the desert so well, let alone live and make a living here. Not that I mean to say that you shouldn't be.
You know what, Ren? I've got to give you some credit, actually. It's been years now, hasn't it? And not once have you asked, so...
Well, yes, I have been hesitant, but I will say it is not the first time I've thought of it.
Yeah, you're right, it is a bit odd, but I've known a couple others in my time. I wish there was a bit more story for it. I feel like you're going to be slightly disappointed. I was born here. Simple as that. And, well, you do what you have to, don't you? It's not too dissimilar, though. Look out there for a second. You can just about see it still, can't you? Just about. The shape of the waves, the way the light hits on it, the way the wind rustles over the top. It's been a long time since I've seen the sea, don't get me wrong, but they're not too dissimilar, are they?
I suppose I've never thought of that. I suppose the sand is quite a lot like the sea. But you certainly can't swim in it.
I think I've been pretty close.
Only you would be,
Do you want to know something real funny, though?
What's that?
I don't even know if I can actually swim.
You can see him restraining from laughing.
Go on, let it out. It is fine.
I cannot believe that. Have you not been in the water?
I think I must have when I was a lot younger. I feel like we've definitely been to the coast before, but I can't recall if I ever went in.
Surely your mother or your father would not let you grow up without learning to swim.
Well, again, you know the ways of my people. We don't stay down too long. I can't even strictly recall too well who exactly was my mother or father. About 30 of us in a caravan, we roamed around.
Yes, I suppose that is the difficulty of your nomadic upbringing.
It's the beauty of it, I think.
Each to their own. Well, I will say this. The desert is growing on me every time I come.
For moments like this, eh?
Very different to the mountains. But beautiful, nonetheless.
Always said, the sky's different in the sands.
And as you both sit, admiring the pinky purplish twilight of the night and the twinkling stars and the crispness of the desert air, you're somewhat rudely broken out of your whimsical fancyings by the young miner exiting their tent, almost stumbling out of the tent, looking perhaps a little bit well drunk of the night. And it's a face you recognize, a face of a young man that you spoke to earlier in the day. You had a relatively unsavory interaction with. And this young man, who's off a good 20 paces at the tent door, sort of looks at you both very subtly and wanders round the back of the tent. As he does so, you can begin to hear him relieving himself. And Ren looks over to you and says, I saw that earlier today you met young apprentice Kieran. I can only imagine he did not have many good words to say to you. I'm sorry. I must apologize.
Don't you apologize for him. He's a product of his upbringing, isn't he?
He certainly is. I think he thinks he's above all of this.
Certainly thinks he'll be above you someday.
He most certainly already thinks that he is. To be honest, all of these young folk, especially young Kieran, but all of them, they don't listen to me. They don't seem to have any respect for my knowledge. They think they know everything already. But they don't know dull stone from diamonds, I will tell you that.
Yeah. Seems to be the way lately, you're right, I've noticed. Customers being a bit more brash. Certainly makes my job harder, but I don't know why it is. Something in the air.
Maybe changing of the times, I think.
Suppose we should have a drink to that.
So as we can do. I think my time is up. I don't think I'll be coming into the desert too many times after this.
Oh, you're not that old, Ren, surely.
I feel fine. Feel like I could go for years, but well, when people don't hear what you have to say, you start fading into the background, you know?
It's the only place I've ever really known.
Maybe I will join you there.
You should. Leave the guild, Ren, come on. I'm being serious this time. You're better than it. It's holding you back.
It's
weighing you down.
It's a good place. Yohm, you should try again. You have a lot of skill that you could offer.
I do offer it. For a healthy profit, I may add. But no, this is the way to do it, I'm telling you. For holding to no one, Go where you want to go, see what you want to see. And get that sense of fulfillment back. When's the last time you did a job because you wanted to, Ren? When's the last place you discovered a secret for knowledge's sake? Instead of just for a few more marks again?
I can't truly answer that question. Now think about it. How about that?
Rest assured I'll always have your company. You're one of the few repeat customers that they keep coming back. It's got to be worth something.
It's tempting. As you ponder for a moment, young Kieran comes back round the other side of the tent, and Ren calls out to him just before he tucks himself back inside. Young Kieran, don't stay up too late. Don't be too close to that flask. We have a big day tomorrow. Kieran seems to look at him with a grimace in his face. And he waves his hand and bats it away in a dismissive fashion, and arches his way back into the tent. See, they do not listen. They do not care.
Well, we could try and make him care.
I wish I knew how.
Leave it with me. I've got an idea or two.
I see. Feel like you have a plan.
Well, an idea.
I would be very grateful for any mischief that you'd wish to cause on these young men.
Yeah, we've still just got... It's only a couple hours away. In the morning. We can have a little bit of fun. What'd you say?
I think I'm up for ruffling their feathers.
That's my boy, well done. Knew there's a bit of spark in you yet.
It's still there. It's still there. As he takes another small swig from his flask.
Yeah, I give him a hearty sort of pat on the back as I, at this point, sort of get ready to get up and take my leave towards the tent.
Yes, you're right. It's nearly time for bed.
Aye. Like you said, long day tomorrow.
Absolutely.
That's good advice.
Yes, I should take it. Yohm, before you go, please tell me this is just this drink talking. But these towers we see as we travel, yes, you know what I talk about?
Yeah.
These spires. I swear. He raises his finger to the horizon and points outwards of the encampment, over to a spire way off in the distance. It's just silhouetted against the dunes in the night. I swear that was not there when we set up our camp this evening. Maybe I'm getting my bearings wrong.
No, I think you might be right, Ren. I'm almost ashamed I didn't notice that sooner.
But who could have made that? Is this a trick of the Mamu?
Some think so. Some think it's a relic of a bygone age, an old technique used back in the day by the original desert tribe folk.
Oh.
Special construction technique or something like that. Who knows?
And they are likely to just appear.
Less appear, they wander. That's how I feel like it anyway. I've come close to one before, but never managed to see the inside just yet. That'll be a sight, I tell you.
This desert seems to have more and more mysteries every time I come.
Just the same amount. You're starting to ask better questions.
I'm tired of asking questions for today. I think I will forget about wandering towers and head to bed.
Yeah, go for it. So chew on that sweet root instead, you'll be fine.
Yes. Yes, I will. You sleep well?
Thank you. And you, my friend.
And he gets himself up and hobbles his small and stout stature over to his tent, and is gone behind the flap. You're left by the fireside.
Well, now I'm alone, I will just have a little chew on some of the whistleweed that I just stashed in my pocket from earlier. Just slow and steady, just almost like a slow mint sort of taste sensation. And just sit and enjoy the peace and quiet for a moment. Soak in and try and solidify that memory of the Mamu dancing out of the lily pad, because it's just a little beautiful thing to see. And make sure the fire's all settled and burn out through the night nice and easy. Do the final look around of all the tents. Make sure there's no strange noises, no one's too restless. And then, actually, I'm going to go round the back of Kieran's tent. And I'm going to try my best to gently, like either with a little sickle or just by itself, place one of the whisper weeds back into the ground just behind his tent in a way that I think the wind will catch it throughout the night, and hope that it provides a somewhat spooky accompaniment to his evening.
Sure thing. So as you spend, like as you say, you spend a little bit of time chewing on your quite gristly and licorice-like whistleweed while solidifying that beautiful encounter from earlier. Once you feel satisfied and the area is clear and you know the fire is going to burn out for the night, creep round the back of Kieran's tent and try and submerge some of this whistleweed just at the back side, where you feel like you might just be laying his head. And why don't you roll for me, just to see how lucky you get with the positioning and the wind of that.
Probably not too lucky with a 5.
Well, with a 5, you struggle a little bit to find firm enough ground to get the whistleweed directly in. So it does sort of loosely tilt, and you're not so confident, but just as you get up to creep away, you notice that the wind this evening just happens to be blowing in that right direction, round and low to the ground, where you just hear this small tinkling of a... You feel like you may get a little bit of noise out of that throughout the night.
Close enough.
And from here...
And then I return and finish up, I suppose, setting up the last little pieces of my tent, as I was going to travel a little lighter than most of these guild folk. So I just throw a few sticks into the ground, throw out my usual rags and tags that make a nice canvas across the top, and it's got a lot of looser torn threads hanging down the side as an almost vine-like appearance to the edges of the tent. And I lay with one side open so I can still see the stars in the sky. Lay out my sleeping bag and roll on down and rest my head.
Beautiful. Yes, your tent certainly looks very ragtag, very improvised, as opposed to these very formulaic and well-conceived tent structures that come with beams and poles and screws that the Miners Guild have put together. Very unhomely, and whilst yours looks improvised, it is of course very thought about and thorough and appropriate for the desert. But you set yourself up in no time at all, of course, and lay your bed down and lay your head down. and gradually find yourself falling asleep. And as you do, you enter into the dream world, a place where your thoughts, your ideas, your creativity, your memories come to life. As your thoughts begin to swirl around and sleep comes upon you, you find yourself in a long corridor in a castle made of sand. There's a bright light coming from a sun above you, and in this corridor you can see open archways that line either wall. If you walk forward, just poke your head through those archways, you can see a bright light shining through from each of them. And you feel like if you were to walk through these archways, you're going to find something maybe that you haven't thought about for a while coming back to you.
I slide one foot in front of the other, hand grazing in the sandy walls as I walk past. I feel lighter, more ethereal. I almost drift to the first archway and let the light pull me in.
And as your ethereal form begins to float and be pulled like a current by the light through this archway, the light becomes more intense and bright, almost a flash before it dulls down once more. And you find yourself a young boy. You're taken back to a place you haven't thought about for some years. You're in your settlement, the one you grew up in. You're surrounded by the tents and caravans, the sights and smells and colours when you're a child. Children and adults alike roaming around, the bright colours of the tents and fabrics that lined the decorations of your encampment. The smell of the sweet burning wood. Adults teaching children to weave baskets. Children running around, playing games. People bustling around, busy. Setting up, having just landed in their new home for the next few days before setting up camp and finding their new home. But this was the home that you had. Just in this moment, when you're surrounded by a crowd of children. Your friends growing up, some of which you'd consider your brothers and sisters, and they all surround you with faces of awe, faces of joy, surprise, some of shock, some with furrowed brows and suspicion. One of them says to you, "It can't be. There's nothing like that in the desert. An oasis. A shimmering oasis. We'd have found it. One of the elders would have found it. You're a liar. You're a liar, Yohm."
"I'm no liar," I regrettably yell out in frustration and anger as all these childish emotions come flooding back and putting me back into my younger, less self-assured shoes again, and remembering one of the proudest days of my life being met with such suspicion and disdain. But in that moment, I look around and I see Hannah, one of my best friends of the time, and I see just a quick look in her eye again that at least she believes me. Makes me feel a little bit calmer again. I am no liar. I repeat, I am no liar. It's just out there. I can show you. I can show everyone. If only you'd listen. If only you'd come.
And just as you're making your pleas to your friends, and everyone's jostled with the tumult of your desperation to show everyone, you see one of the elders coming over from the distance and breaking through the crowd towards you. It's an elder woman dressed in colourful garb, with this characteristic ruffled hood that you knew she would wear, and this beautiful long silvery hair. A woman you know as Elder Aya. She comes to you and says, "Now, children, what seems to be the matter here? There's no need for shouting. Let's all express ourselves calmly. Yohm?"
I'm sorry, Aya. It's just, I want you all to believe me.
Believe what, Yohm? What's happened here?
There's somewhere out there. It's the leaves, they're so tall, and the greens, there's greens like you've never seen. The rocks, the mamu were there too. I promise you, Aya. You just have to trust me.
You promise me, Yohm?
I mean, it's just there. And in that moment, it feels like I'm staring right at this cherished oasis that I remember so fondly. Like it's just round the corner, even though it's not. But the memory and the belief in what I saw is so strong in that moment. I can see it. And I begin getting frantic once more, trying desperately to give words to these things which haven't been named to my knowledge before, and describe them to this person I respect so much.
And as Elder Aya sees you in this almost panicked frustration, trying to express yourself and describe these beautiful things you've seen, and understanding that frustration you feel from not being heard, she takes a knee, comes down to your level and holds you by your shoulders, says, "Yohm, if you believe what you've seen is real, and I believe in you, let's go find it." She smiles warmly into your face, at which moment you're taken out of your childish form. You return to this floating ethereal body, and you feel the currents of the light shift and weave you back out the archway into the sandy hallway you're in before, each of the archways in front of you twinkling inside like stars.
Pause once more, taking a deep breath, feeling an imaginary tear roll down my cheek, and in a flash, once more, pull towards the next archway.
As you do so, that familiar current pulling you inside, your ethereal form almost twisting and turning and flowing down and down, and the bright light shines and flashes into your eyes before you are thrown back into another form of your younger life. Not quite as young as before, slightly older. You find yourself a very unusual room, unusual for you, but one you remember distinctly as the study of one of the masters of the Artisans Guild. It's a room clad with deep mahogany oak, crafted exquisitely, crafts like you've never seen before, and quite frankly, you've never really had much appreciation for, but its skill is undeniable. The walls are lined with paintings of great vivid colour and imagination. And in front of you is Master Runedale, standing in front of a half-finished painting of Suncolt City with a brush in his hand, his large protruding moustache staring into your face, his bald head gleaming with light from the sun of the window that shines on top of it. And behind you, with hands on your shoulders, stands Elder Aya. And you can hear her voice behind you, talking over your head to Master Runedale, pleading, "You must understand. Yohm is not like the other children, no. But if you knew what he was capable of, you'd certainly understand that it is a regrettable mistake to not have him as part of your guild." And Master Runedale, almost as if not talking to Elder Aya at all, but looking directly into your eyes, says, "We have no space for anyone who dillies and dallies with fancies of the desert. If you apply yourself to all sorts of things here and there, you apply yourself to nothing." Does Yohm remember what it was like to be standing there during that time?
He does. He remembers the frustration, the incompatibility that he was feeling in that moment. He felt like screaming out, "If only you could see what I see. Dilly-dally, wasting time with the desert." For a master, he had no idea. And it was up to Yohm to show him. It was up to Yohm to show everyone in that moment that they were wrong. And there was plenty of time for the desert. There was plenty of time for the journey. It wasn't all about the master craft and the end result. The work itself was worth it. And that was the defining moment which really put the last brick in the wall between Yohm and the future with the guilds. A life of independence was his from that point on, despite growing up with people like Elder Aya still, people who did care and support him. At that moment he knew they were all essentially useless to him, and he had to go and show them all what they were missing.
And as that memory of the rigid solidification of Yohm's feelings towards the guilds, and indeed the world and people, fills Yohm's body and soul, that anger and that forthrightness and that true understanding of where his life would lead from then on comes starkly back to you. The feelings rush through your body and uplifts your spirit once more out of that younger form back into your ethereal drifting form, and you are pulled once more through the currents. As you're pulled backwards away from the blinding light, the lights begin to dance and swirl, and colours appear to you. Colours swirl, lines and circles, and twists and twirls present themselves to your eyes. You launched backwards almost as if you're moving through a sea of geometry and shape and colour. You can feel the electricity in the atmosphere around your ethereal form as you rush and rush backwards and slowly come to a halt in amongst a sea of swirling colours. And there, in front of you, the colours merge and form an eye, one single giant eye as large as the sky itself opens in front of you, and is surrounded by these swirling colours like jewels. And you can feel the presence of that eye looking at you and seeing you, really not just seeing what you look like but who you are, almost being able to understand the memories you've just seen, really feeling them with you. You can feel that, although it is unspoken. And a voice comes to you that you know comes from this presence, this perceiving eye. It says to you, "I've enjoyed living your life, Yohm. Will you help me?"
Yes, I will. Of course I will.
My life is a tumultuous one. I'm everywhere. I'm everything. I live multitudes. So much is needed of me, but I just wish to sleep. I must rest. Will you help me rest, Yohm?
I will. I will.
I knew you were someone to believe in. Suddenly, as you're overwhelmed by the presence and colour of this perceiving eye, your eyes open and you find yourself laying on the cot in your tent. The flapping of the fabric of your tent jostling in the wind. I've got a vague sort of a headache this morning, and your eyes feel especially sore. You don't have much time to consider your dream or how you've awoken, as the silhouette of Wren stands in the open doorway of your tent as he calls to you. Yohm, are you awake?
Aye. Yeah, just about right.
I'm sorry to disturb you, but we have a small situation.
Situation?
I'm hoping it is small, although it is rather large. It is better if you just see.
Yeah, of course. What is it?
Come this way. And it's not too long before you take but a few steps outside of your tent and adjust your eyes to the morning light before you see, just in front of you, above the ridge, the small valley that you've planted your encampment in, this huge, building-sized creature of yellow, almost like a coiling serpent, sat right on top of the ridge there, almost with its tail buried in the ground. And it's got these large, round eyes you remember before from the small mamu you encountered last night. And this is indeed gigantic spirit creature. It seems to have implanted itself right next to your encampment, and it's staring down at everyone, and you can see all of the young miners out of their tents just looking up at this gigantic creature in awe and shock and without any idea what to do. And Ren looks to you, says, "Please, tell me this is at least somewhat normal."
I look to him, and before I even get the words out, he can see what the face says. I have no idea. And I immediately grab my staff, which is masquerading as a tent post at the moment, and just on pure instinct alone, march towards it.
As you grab your staff, march towards it, you have to part the young miners out of the way to get in front of it as they still stand stupefied. You look up at this huge mamu, larger than anything you've seen before. And you understand that this is going to be quite a different day to what you're expecting it to be.